Imagine that in the middle of nowhere, there is a rig where there are murders happening. Now, that is the story of Rig 45, but is this a show worth watching? We will find that in this review. So, stay tuned, guys. Hello, welcome to ReviewMagic. My name is Sidharth Kumar, and this is a channel where we objectively review movies or shows. Now, today we will be diving deeper and doing an analysis on season 1 of Rig 45. Rig 45 is available on Amazon Prime, and this is the plot of the show. So, a murder has already happened on Rig 45. This is in the middle of the ocean, which typical rigs are structured that way, and a person by the name of Andrea, that is played by Catherine Walker. She's a damage regulator and a specialist investigator. So she goes from Benthos Oil Company to this rig, and when she arrives there, one after the other murders are happening. The crew is not willing to talk to her, and ultimately, a storm brews. There is also communication that gets cut. So Andrea pretty much gets stuck. She has been brought to this rig to investigate 2 days before Christmas. So there is a lot going on in this thriller plot. And ultimately, the goal here is to find out who is the ultimate murderer. So that is short and simple, the plot of Rig 45. Now let's dive into the main core of today's video, which is the review and analysis. So certainly this is a dark thriller that has been portrayed from the very get-go. When you hear the soundtrack, Keep Me in the Dark, this is by Anna Turnham. Now that sets the tone. All the casting announcements are made on the introduction of the show, so that hooks the audience, and very immediately you know that something bad is going to happen. This is a dark story. So as I mentioned, this music soundtrack, which I have always, if you have followed my channel, you will see that I am a big proponent of a music intro or outro that kind of ties in the show, and it's kind of that glue. And the better the music intro, in my opinion, it kind of sets that stage and makes the audience interested. So I like the soundtrack. It feels a little bit, the wordings have been stretched out, but nevertheless, I think I'll still think that this is a decent track to include at the beginning of Rig 45. Now, when this show starts, you are going to see that Andrea gets a call 2 days before Christmas to go and investigate a fatal accident or a death that has happened in Rig 45. Now, the question that I, as a reviewer, am going to think that why would a company send your damage specialist 2 days before Christmas? I mean, this is a time where you're spending a lot of your time with family. There are other things to look forward to, New Year. So why would you not send someone, after the New Year? And also, as I mentioned earlier, there is a storm brewing. So when all these data points are available, it just feels a little unrealistic that this is happening. And also, you can see that in the first scene, Andrea, she is not very comfortable leaving her 2 kids and a husband behind to go to the rig. She and her husband have arguments, but nonetheless, she feels that, this is her obligation, and this is going to help her to get a job in the office, closer to her family. So, it's going to be a better work-life balance. So she agrees and she arrives at the rig. And now, when she reaches the rig, she gets this cold vibe from the employees of Benthos Oil, and it almost seems like no one wants to talk to her. And I can imagine, some investigator coming, people are going to be cold and all that, but the kind of reception she gets there is a bit awkward. And also in the story, you don't see the head of the rig, which they use the term OEM in it. And he does his job. He tries to introduce Andrea to everyone, but it doesn't feel like he does it with a lot of assertiveness. He does it because he just feels someone is sitting on his shoulders. So I thought that was also a little bit of awkwardness there. And why you would want to do that is because you would really want cooperation from everyone in this investigation of that fatal accident. That's why Andrea is here. But when your tone is monotone, it's bland, there is not a lot of leadership that comes out, people or the crew also doesn't really give in. So I thought the start at the rig scene was also something bland, which could have been a little bit more stronger. The other thing is that when Andrea is talking to a lot of people asking about, investigating the death and all that, it almost feels like these are off the cuff conversations, standing in the alley, this is a rig, has got a lot of machinery, sometimes in the cafeteria, sometimes, just on the railing, on the side. This should have been shown as a professional investigation, one-on-one, just like you see in a criminal show where they take a person in a room, it's closed. That may not happen here, but at least you could schedule time where people could come one after the other, but you almost see a haphazard random way of questioning. So I wish that there was something better, professional way that could have been institutionalized to help Andrea talk to people, break the ice, and also get more information that she needed. It's also interesting that you don't see too many workers on the rig. Now, I understand that, when you're casting actors, there are only so many people you want because then the show is gonna, keep stretching. But typically these rigs have a lot of people. It's a massive oil operation. And I have seen movies where there are a lot of people. So where are they? Why is there such a limited cast? So perhaps the good thing would have been that a question could have been posed, like, where are the rest of the staff? And you could have said that they have gone offshore, they've got leaves, or they were sent beforehand because of Christmas and so on. Only the elite people are on this rig, and something like these people were sent before that murder happened, so that Andrea doesn't get confused. Now she has to go and get those people and investigate them. So it could have been more easier that way to lay the ground and the foundation on the rig. The mystery on the face of oil workers is pretty clear. You can definitely see that the crew members are trying to hide certain things. There is secrecy brewing in them. There is also, there are a few people on the rig that are smuggling narcotics. So they start to now get panicked that, that thing would get surfaced. There are some people who are kind of neutral, but there are some people who are cold, and they kind of are not giving very positive signals to Andrea. So that is a good thing. I mean, if you want to show, of course, the blendingness in that character is good. There are all sorts of people. I mean, there's a guy who flies a chopper, someone who is a nurse, someone who is managing the oil rig operations, people at the tactical level. So yes, you kind of see that environment, which is quite realistic in this sense. So that is definitely expected, and it gets delivered in Rig 45. It's also interesting to see that no one is putting a blame on anyone. Typically, what happens is that, in thriller shows, you see manipulation happening, one person pointing fingers on the other pointing fingers on the other. But this is a very clear-cut case of, all right, this person is here, she's going to investigate whoever did the killing and solve this mystery. So kind of a different take on the thriller. You see some thrillers where there's politics brewing, people trying to side with others. But in this case, people are not talking to each other. Very small groups are there, and they just keep to themselves. So that is a interesting element to notice in Rig 45. One of the major twists in this season 1 show is that the lead investigator, who is Andrea, she gets killed. And I was taken by surprise in that. So clearly there is a moment of a U-turn in this thing. You would expect that someone with that caliber comes to the rig. She is going to be driving, leading all of this thing, this murder mystery. But she gets killed. I did not see that coming. So definitely this is out of the blue for me, but it's that interesting spark that directors or showmakers want to do it, and you see that happening. So like as I said in the beginning, that the intro music, the way the story unfolds, so there are sections where the story is kind of climbing, then there are some patches where it kind of slows down because Andrea comes there, and now Andrea gets murdered. So again, you get attentive. Oh my goodness, what happened? And it's very unfortunate that someone actually kills her. She bleeds out and she actually dies. I think to the scene where her dead body is lying in the morgue and someone opens up the bag with the zip to make sure that she's really there. It's definitely a defining moment in this particular show, because now the question is, now who is going to investigate? Andrea was talking to her boss using Skype, she was talking to her family, and all of a sudden when they get to know that she's murdered everyone, it's a very ransacked situation now. Like, okay, now they have to figure out what is going on, who murdered her, because everyone was at a certain point at certain locations. They are tracking where people are. That's what Andrea was doing. Andrea is trying to now dig further. I mean, that actually resulted in someone killing her, because she was peeling the onion, she was getting deeper into the investigation, and you kind of get these false narratives from different people. They feel that Andrea should not be there, she died because she was getting too deeper into it. So then your mind starts questioning that he may be the culprit, or that person may be the culprit. So they kind of add that mysteries after Andrea's death. So there's a lot of things that now unfolds. There's that interesting sequence that I talked about. Andrea gets murdered, and then now people start to think there might be a extra person on the rig that is doing all this. So it's definitely a good twist in my opinion, because you might think that all the people that are working there, they were at those dedicated positions, they were not closer to Andrea when that murder happened. So there has to be an outsider on the rig, which no one is aware about. So pretty interesting element to watch in this show when that happens. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that finger pointing was not happening, but after Andrea's death, there are more deaths that start to happen, and that's where the finger pointing begins to happen. Now you see the crew is more agitated. They are pointing fingers, they're blaming, they are kind of siding with who is more responsible, who is more likely to kill, and so on. So it's a big twist. From the very beginning, people are cold, aloof, they're not talking to each other, they're reserved. Andrea comes in, she gets murdered, and now you see everyone gets into that panic attack mode. And that is actually the turning point, in my opinion, in Rig 45, because right after the lead investigator said, you will see several other people also die, and the manner in which they die is very atypical. Someone dies because they fell from the rig. Someone dies because they were sitting in the room. There was an explosion that happened. Someone was trying to get the cocaine packets uncovered. There's an explosion there. And I know I'm giving a lot of spoiler alerts, but when you watch this, of course you will see there are different nuances to it. No death is the same. So that kind of is also a kind of variety. I mean, that's the word I'm using in terms of like how they are showing all these deaths that are happening, and it kind of builds that suspense and momentum for you to keep watching Rig 45. So as an audience, you're always tackling this question, who the real murderer is, and this is not solved till the end. Now, the other thing that I talked about is Andrea comes in and, she's investigating an accident. This is a former employee of Frederick. He gets murdered, but there's not a lot of depth that is shown into, why or how he got murdered. Until the end, you get to know all that. So I wish there were some more details that were added to this. And then the fact that Andrea starts to get into a relationship with the crew, you can see some romance building. Now she's married. Of course, her and her husband's relationship is not going well, but now they're showing this thing. I don't know if that was really necessary to show or not, but in my opinion, it could have been avoided and we could have focused more on the killings, the murders, the deaths, all that stuff that is happening. So the show is showing you the guy is emotional now for Andrea who has died, but how much of that impact is there? You will see there is none. So why to have that romance brewing between these? It just doesn't make sense to me. So it's definitely a decent thriller in my opinion. There are ups and downs, there are twists, and people are thinking, who's the real killer? And I think one of the interesting things about this show is also the location. Now, when you do a standard thriller movie, which is offshore, you're going door to door, you're in city, house, and all that. This could be a good break from there because this is very much contained. There are only 5 to 6 people on the rig. It is in the middle of the ocean. You can't leave it. So everything is centered around it. So that also makes it an interesting show. So that is my opinion. And that's what is my analysis and personal review on Rig 45. So that's where we concluded. Now let's talk about direction of Rig 45. So to take a story from start to finish in Rig 45, I think the director did a decent job to pull it off. This is definitely an intriguing and interesting story, because of all those things that I talked about in the review section, the one before it. So I feel like, this is definitely a good story that was communicated via actors, via set stage, via the plot, which only thickens, as you start to watch season 1. And I think that this is something, there doesn't seem to be, any flaw overall in as far as the storytelling is concerned. You don't get bored, you don't feel like this doesn't make sense, except for a few things that I talked about in my review section as to the romantic relationship, why is Andrea there 2 days before? I mean, you can argue that, yes, it's required, but in my opinion, I think if you discount that, the rest of the story is pretty much, it fits into that thriller genre. So the direction, the way it's flowing, the character buildings, the interactions, the whole gamut of this thing makes this a good story to show to the audience, also to make them feel like they are really watching a good directorial thriller show. Now let's talk about the acting, and that is also one of the plus points of this show, is that there is a unique blend of actors from multiple demographics and ethnicities. I mean, you've got British actors, you have Scottish, Norwegian, Swedish actors. So I think everyone's personality is very different. Their dialects, their accents are all different. And what you see is at the end of the day is all of them are working together. Now, they could be one of them is a murderer, but that's something, very diverse, but yet they're all coming together. And they're trying to run operations. They're trying to, of course, be in this show. So the director could have probably casted, everyone from Norway or Sweden, Britain. This show was shot in Ireland, maybe all Irish people, but that's not the case. It's a unique blend of different people. So you see their personalities, characters. It's kind of an interesting mix overall to me. So, I mean, there are seasoned actors here. So, Catherine, she's from Versailles. You have GaryLewis, Scottish actor in Gangs of New York. You've got David Densick. He's a Danish actor in Chestnut Man. I've seen his show. There are other actors too. So, I think overall the acting was pretty spot on. They were brilliantly performed. They did fit into their characters very well, and looking and feeling like you're a rig operator or you're a rig manager or you're a chopper pilot and all that. So it really makes you only think that the acting skills were really good. This was a good casting overall, and I was impressed by everyone's role in the movie. Now, when it comes to cinematography and art direction, this rig looks pretty real. I know they have done visual effects as well to show the ocean, the sea, but to just make that setup looks very realistic. There is just way too many things over here. So full marks to the art direction team. The cinematography is great too. Especially I like the intro scene where a chopper is coming and it's closing in into the rig, and also there is this dark bluish filter that is used on the camera work, so it kind of gives you that appeal that this is a thriller dark story. So cinematography was good. There is the dark filter, as I mentioned. The storm is brewing. They show all that. It is done in a very good way to augment the existing direction, acting, the plot of the story. So I was quite impressed with that. That was a good job when it came to cinematography and art direction. All right, the last section of this review, the ratings, conclusion, and why you should watch it. So if you're in the mood of a digestible thriller and you want to watch something that's off the cuff, that's in a dedicated location, in a rig, there's not much to think about. Typically what happens is that I've seen a lot of thrillers, whether it's British, Indian, whether it's based here in America. There are so many characters that get introduced, and after a while your mind starts to boggle down as to who the plot is referring to, and you try to connect the dots. There's so many names that are out there, and especially the ones that are not American, English based, then you have to really know the names. So you have to look at the subtitles or watch the show very carefully. But in this particular show, there is only a handful of actors, 5 to 6 actors. So it's very easy to follow this thing. So that's one good thing, that if you don't want to get confused or anything, you can just watch this show. This is a one-time show. You can actually watch it with your family. I think this is suspense related show that anyone can watch. And if you're also a fan of some of the seasoned actors that I mentioned, GaryLewis, he's such a seasoned actor. He's phenomenal. So I think that would be overall my rating, which will stand at 7 out of 10. That is what I would give. So guys, that's all the review for Rig 45 season 1. I know season 2 has also started. I'm watching it, and I hope that is better than season 1, but we'll see. But if you liked my review, please like this video or subscribe to my channel, or if you have any comments, please link it or type in below. I look forward to them. But until then, this is Sidharth Kumar signing off, and I'll see you next time with another review. Take care. Bye-bye.